The Susan Brender Show is a radio show online broadcasted on YouTube across the United States and globally. The show features guests who speak about health, spirituality, entertainment, and a host of subjects to enlighten people across the nation. Listen to the show that empowers women and men alike and highlights those who have made a difference. I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. And today I'm so pleased to have Rhonda Farrah back on my show. You know, she's doing part of a series of many different issues concerning all kinds of spirituality and, basically based upon her book, which is America's Leading Ladies Who Positively Impact Our World. She's really going to talk about some of the things that are in that particular book. And today, and I'm very excited because today is part of the month where love is very important. And it's because, we celebrate so many things. It's Valentine's Day coming up in the near future. And this is a positive and exciting time to be talking about love, or maybe what love is really not. So I want to welcome to my show Rhonda Farrah, and I want us to talk about what is love, Rhonda, because there's so many different definitions of what it means to different people.
Yes, Susan, and wonderful to be back, and wonderful to be back in the month of love and talking about love. So, what is love? We all ask that question to ourselves, and you just asked me. For me, love is the intimacy which lies within and between all of us. And if you are acting from love, you are acting as well from gratitude and with thankfulness. That's what love is, to act gratefully and thankfully. And so you can experience the intimacy, which does, in fact, lie within you, within me, within each of us, and between all of us. So the short and long of it, that's what love is. It's not like something material, and the more you give of it, the less that remains. That's not what love is at all. As a matter of fact, the more we give, the more we have to give when it comes to love. So I think of love as the intimacy, again, which is within each one of us and between all of us.
You say that this is an opportunity to also discuss exercise for expanding gratitude, which will allow and provide for real love in our lives.
Yes.
I understand a little bit about what that means, but I want you to explain further.
Okay. First of all, again, what I said was, when you are in a state of gratitude, when you are thankful, you are exuding a love, you are exuding a brilliance, you are exuding the magnificence that is within you. And it's emulating and illuminating everything around you. So when we talk about shift our nature from fear and doubt, which are the opposite of thankfulness and the opposite of gratitude, when we can shift our nature, we are allowing more love to be put forth from us, as well as more love that we can receive back. So if we are expecting love from and with others, it will show up. And there are ways, there's an exercise to do that, which will put you in the state of gratitude. So shifting from reacting and knee-jerk, that fear and doubt stuff that goes on for all of us, which will allow you to respond in a way that will provide more love for you and for those around you.
What happens if you have a personality that is pretty negative or cynical, if you will, and, you kind of doubt, because sometimes people in their lives, they want love, and they expect to have love with somebody, but it just doesn't happen. And they say to themselves, here, for the grace of God, I tried to find somebody, but it just didn't happen. So what do they say, and what do they do?
Well, we forget often that we manifest what we expect rather than needing to compete for these limited resources when we're saying, well, I tried, I didn't get who and what I wanted, and I feel so unloved. And those are people that are reacting versus responding. And reaction is too often sourced in fear, sourced in doubt, sourced in their low self-esteem. So whenever we forget that we are magnificent beings and that there is plenty of wealth, plenty of happiness, plenty of fun and fulfillment to go around, we feel the need to protect ourselves from what we are perceiving is what I would call the dangerous world. And we deny ourselves on a couple of levels. We deny self-love. We do that real often, I feel. And when we have two or more individuals that do not see themselves as good enough to tap into this infinite and unlimited abundance in our world and get all their needs met, physically, socially, mentally, emotionally, conflicts are likely to arise. And that's the result is broken relationships, strained communication, emotional pain, struggle, and suffering, to name but a few things. So to detach from all of that, the key to bringing out the best in others is to experience and express a non-attachment. Sounds totally contrary to what we're trying to do when it comes to bringing and receiving love. If we just detach, if we just release, then our responses will be in a spirit of gratitude, in a spirit of thankfulness, and will allow us to respond in love and receive love.
Yeah. Is romantic love the most important love of all from your, experience in this world or your knowledge of love itself? What do you think about that?
No. Personally, as well as professionally, I do not believe, my opinion is that romantic love is not the most important love. My opinion is self-love is the most important love, because without self-love, without the nurturing of yourself, without the loving of yourself, without nourishing yourself, it's very difficult to love, to nourish, and to nurture another. So beginning with self-love is where the most important stuff comes to the forefront. If you can love yourself, well, you can practice one degree of love for anyone in your life.
Now, that's interesting, very interesting, actually. But I'm curious about this particular idea. To me, it sounds like when you love yourself, or if you can love yourself, the reason is because you come from a family who has that kind of, well, I'm going to call it attitude. I mean, it's that they encourage you, they build your self-esteem, they build your confidence. And that's when you can really look within yourself and say, see, my family thinks I'm great. And then there are situations that are dysfunctional families. You're lucky if you ever get a hug or a kiss. Yes. So I'm, from your standpoint, is it so that it all depends upon how you grew up?
I think that's an important part of it. I think that families provide core values to each and every one of us. I also think you mentioned the word dysfunctional. The statistic is rising. Probably 80% of families are dysfunctional in one realm or another. So I don't want to blame the absence of love or being able to love oneself on simply how we're brought up. There are many people that are brought up in abusive and dysfunctional families, yet they take those instances, those circumstances and events, and they learn some valuable lessons from them. And in learning some valuable lessons, they learn to grow. And rather than reflect on what is defective in them, they learn to say, hey, I am a champion. I've been through many, many escapades where I have every reason not to practice self-love, let alone expect love from and with others. I have every reason to say love will not show up, but they reach down deep within them and they take those broken relationships, they take strained communication, they take pain, struggle, suffering, and they realize if they can just detach from that all of that is needless. All of that is simply optional when it comes to receiving love. So core values, yes, very important. But if we can take again, as a lifestyle empowerment alchemist, take the good and the not so good and put them together. Mix those ingredients together and realize that it is the good, it is the not so good, it is the negative and the toxic that help us to understand who and where we are, that help us to realize just how magnificent we are and proceed from there.
Yeah. Shouldn't love, really feel very comfortable? And should it always feel new and exciting? How do you kind of explain that? I think, for me, it's just when you're with certain people or you're thinking even about yourself, it's really feeling very soothing and comfortable and new and exciting. So, do you tell that to the people whom you see in your practice?
Well, love is all as anything is. It's what we make it. So if we decide that others, as well as ourselves, are worthy, are competent, are loving, are good-natured, we are totally creating a win-win situation. So when you say, how do you love, how we started this, and what is love?
Yeah.
Love is, when it comes to love, anything that has to do with fear and doubt, fear of losing love, fear of being controlled by others, fear of being taken advantage of, is exactly not love. Being grateful is in fact love, which will produce the intimacy, which will produce, hey, maybe it does feel like it's brand new love every day of the week. Maybe it won't. Yeah. Regardless of situation or circumstance, love exists. Again, we've discussed this in other episodes. Love exists if we choose to have it exist, if we choose to identify and realize that it's there, if we choose to detach from maybe these pains and struggles and these fears and doubts and all this stuff that goes on in our head and realize that it is there and I choose love. I expect love. For myself, I expect love with others, and it is showing up in miraculous ways.
Take us through a situation, for the most part, Rhonda, where someone comes into your office. I do this with you all the time. I like stories. I think stories are very important because people can relate, usually. And I'm just curious. Somebody walks into your office and they said, boy, life is so tough for me right now. Job situation is difficult. Family situation is difficult. A lot of things are just, in my particular life, not so easy. How do you guide them?
Okay, this is great for listeners. I'm so glad you asked me that question because this will get to the crux. It's a little exercise that I would invite listeners to do, and will take on the practice of what I keep calling non-attachment in your relationships, because you're creating space for whomever it is that is in your life, in your love life. It's creating space for yourself as well when it comes to self-love, for those individuals as well as yourself to be who they are and for you to be who you are. So 6 steps, and again, I invite listeners to do this when they say, oh, things aren't great in my life, things aren't great in my business. I really deserve better than this, and I just don't know how to get it into my life. I just don't know how to accomplish it. Step 1, list all the things that you have decided to be grateful for in your life and business. All the things you have decided to be grateful for in your life and business, list them. Step number 2, okay, in a daily journal, which I recommend, record each time that you fail to express gratitude for a challenging situation. Oftentimes, a gratitude journal says, okay, I'm grateful for this, that, my health, my kids, my life, the roof over my head. What I'm asking you to do now is record each time that you fail to express gratitude for a challenging situation, because love is not without challenges. Step number 3, catch yourself reacting emotionally to what someone says or does and shift your perception in that moment to appreciate the learning experience at hand. So someone comes in and says, my life is so rotten, it's so messed up, and I just got into a huge fight with my boyfriend, with my girlfriend, with my spouse.
Mm-hmm.
Understand that in that moment, how can you shift your perception to appreciate the learning experience at hand? It's right there in front of you. There is something to be learned from even the not-so-good stuff happening with us. So list, first of all, what you have to be grateful for in your life and business. Go ahead and record when you were not grateful, when you were not thankful for whatever challenge came up. And then catch how you reacted emotionally to when something happened that you did not appreciate. Okay, step 4, in your daily life and business, who are you not holding as magnificent? Be with that for a second. Who are you not holding as magnificent? Is it yourself? Is it your spouse? Again, your boyfriend, your girlfriend? Is it your children? Who are you not holding as magnificent? 5, how can you champion their excellence and express gratitude for the opportunity to grow in love and wisdom with what they are giving you instead of reacting with anger, with sadness, maybe fear, doubts? Again, all that talk stuff that goes in each of our heads. So who are you not holding as magnificent, and how can you champion their excellence? In other words, how can you realize that they are excellent in one way or another? And step number 6, real important, and you're going to get some heartfelt answers here if you listen to what's going on in your heart. Who are you seeking to control or avoid being controlled by? When we have that element, that control, all the drama that goes with control, being controlled or controlling another, we are forfeiting the opportunity for love. So this is why I call it non-attach, detach in your relationship. In other words, create some space. Take a few steps away. Don't react. Rather, take those few steps away, take a few breaths, and ask yourself these questions. List in your journal for 30 days. Okay, let me try this. When someone says, my life is lousy, what am I supposed to do? How about this? Let's try this. So I offer that to you. And then watch and see what happens for 30 days, maybe even a shorter period of time. What is happening? What is now showing up in your life?
Very interesting. I'm listening to you and saying to myself, if people did something of this nature and made a journal and really went through it and were, really kind of excited about exploring for themselves all these different questions you asked them to ask, wouldn't it be a better world? Now,
well, it would be a better world.
Yeah. Well, now I'm going to just talk a little bit or ask you questions that are really not so much about oneself and loving oneself, but about relationships. So we live in a world where there's such a huge number of divorces, okay? What do they say? It's like 50% of people who get married get divorced. And I'm just curious what you think about what makes people fall out of love.
Well, that's a really good question, Susan. And the question I would say is, were you ever really in love? It's a big difference between being in love and loving another. Loving another, anyone, is a prerequisite to having the life that you desire rather than living life in default mode. And oftentimes, falling in love, were you really ever in love? And now, what is happening that it's all of a sudden not happening for you anymore? You seem to have fallen out of love, or you think that you fell out of love. And again, nobody is perfect 100% of the time. And when you truly love someone, whether you call it being in love or not, you accept their imperfections as well as those things that drew us to them, those things that we became infatuated. Some people call it chemistry, that the chemistry remained. Yeah. And the other thing, too, is really important, getting back to self. If we are falling out of love, what does that mean? And who are we falling out of love with? Oftentimes, the way we react rather than respond. What we don't like in a relationship with someone else is absolutely what we do not care for in ourselves. Look in that mirror and think about that. I am always complaining about this or that with respect to my spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, my children, my employer, the world. I'm always complaining. Who am I really displeased with? And those that can answer themselves honestly will say, I'm displeased with my own life. I'm displeased with, am I really loving myself? I am displeased that I have to do this exercise for 30 days because we do live in an immediate gratification society. I am displeased that I have to do the work. Okay, so falling out of love, were you ever in love to begin with? And do you love yourself? When one loves itself, they can find love under a rock. That's the be-all and end-all. Again, love is the intimacy which lies within and between all of us. So if we recognize the intimacy within ourselves, we will recognize the intimacy in others, to include romantic love in this month of Valentine's Day.
There you go. You put that all together. I think that's really quite wonderful. And I don't want to end on I don't want to end on a very negative point, but I do have to ask this. Would people be able to love someone after they've been unfaithful?
That's a personal question for everyone. Would they be able to love? Are you talking about the same spouse?
Well, it's either their spouse, their boyfriend, their girlfriend. I mean, we're dealing in a world, again, where this happens, and it happens a lot. And so people become very, how should I say, very, I hate to use the word negative again, but they get scared. They become fear.
Right. So they become skeptical.
That's correct.
Two things here. So let's say one person is unfaithful to another person. The person that is unfaithful now wants to remain in the relationship, and they are saying, no, this will never happen again. We've all heard it. This will never happen again. Okay. And the person that was, let's say, cheated on says, I'm not so sure. I'm really skeptical about this. Maybe not out loud, but within. By being that skeptical and by not trusting, they went to the fear and doubt, and they said, nah. They may stay in the relationship and then realize that they are not feeling loved, even if that person that was unfaithful is now bending over backwards, okay, for them. If they're not feeling loved, if they're feeling in the state of fear and doubt, if they're not trusting, so that could go for the unfaithful spouse and keeping that relationship together, and it could also go for the person that is now out of that relationship, whether it was a marriage or not, out of that relationship, and is thinking, oh, how can I ever trust again? How can I ever be intimate with another person? Maybe this is going to happen again. So again, it's a very personal question, but the need for love is always there for all of us.
Yeah. And do you believe that love changes someone?
That it changes someone? I think that the incidence of love within ourselves, the ability to smile, the ability to take the goodness and the magnificence of ourselves as well as others, it changes us for the better. Absolutely. It changes us for the better. That's why everybody wants love, whether they realize it changes us for the better or not. We all want love. Again, we want that intimacy, which again begins within us.
Yes, yes. And I think this is probably a way to end this segment that we're doing as part of the series with you. And I don't know that, well, let me just ask you the question, because it came to my head just now, and I'm thinking about this. And would a person rather have extraordinary love that doesn't last forever or ordinary love that does?
Again, that's a personal preference. Extraordinary love, I'll always go for the extraordinary because I've had both. And especially in Relationships that are short-lived, for whatever reason, they're short-lived. If there was extraordinary love there, that's a tremendous gift.
Yeah.
Relationships, when they are founded later in life, people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, find a mate, let's say, find a spouse, find a partner. Extraordinary love is the best love, because if you're realizing that it's extraordinary, it just gets better and better and better. However, just regular ordinary love, if you have regular ordinary love, in many ways it's extraordinary, and it's a gift as well.
Well, that's a great way to finish your show, because actually, I do have one more, and that is on Valentine's Day, which is coming up. From your point of view, what would be the best way to spend it?
From my point of view, the best way to spend it is to treat myself really well in ordinary ways, which I do on a regular basis anyway, as well as to treat our partners, treat our spouse in an extraordinary way, regardless of what they choose to do, or regardless of if they don't choose to do anything in an extraordinary way. So that's what I would have to say. And it can be something like just being with them, cooking together, understanding each other in a way that maybe you haven't understood each other, and just going there, giving each other that gift. And it isn't, Valentine's Day is not all wine and roses. And I love both wine and roses, but it's not all just that. It's being with yourself in the ordinary ways that now you realize are extraordinary, and it's being with those in your life in ordinary ways and realizing how extraordinary that is.
Just perfect way to end the show. So my guest today is Rhonda Farrah. She's part of a series that we're doing on love and various other things that are connected to her book, which is called America's Leading Ladies Who Positively Impact Our World. And as always, Rhonda, it's been very informative and very educational, and I'm sure our audience, if they take you up on some of the things that you told them, they're going to have very happy and very, very happy life with a smile on their face. So thank you very much for doing this. And tell our audience what's next on the agenda.
Next, we are going to talk about, at some point this month, discovering your life purpose, discovering what you are passionate about, and how that affects you living the life you desire, rather than simply a life in default mode.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much again, and I'm looking forward, and I'm sure our audience is going to look forward to the next in the series. So thank you very much, Rhonda Farrah, for being on the Susan Brender Show. It's wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome, Susan. My pleasure.